And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee.
Because all the blessings that we're going to get, which is entailing the kingdom of heaven, Isaiah the 60th chapter, I'm going to start at the 10th verse and read on down. It says, and the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. So the sons of strangers, that's talking about actual strangers, the other nations, shall build up thy walls. We're going to have them in slavery. So they're going to be building the kingdom of heaven, because we're not building nothing. We're not lifting a hand to move nothing. It says, for in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually, they shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles. That's talking about the actual Gentiles. We're going to take all of their substance, and that their kings may be brought.
And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee.
For the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish, yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted. Verse 13. And the glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee, the fir tree, the pine tree, the box together to beautify the place of my sanctuary, and I will make the place of my feet glorious. So the land of Israel, the land of Jerusalem, is going to be made glorious. It's going to be made glorious once again. The kingdom is going to be built up. We had a taste of that during the time of Solomon's reign, which was for about 40 years. Shall come bending unto thee, and they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the sole of thy feet. And they shall call thee the city of the Lord. The word Zion means monument, the monument of the Holy One of Israel. Whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated, so that no man went through thee, I will make thee an eternal excellency, a joy of many generations. Thou shalt also suck the milk of the Gentiles, and shall suck the breasts of kings, meaning we're going to take all their substance. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord thy power, the Lord and thy Savior and thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. For brass I will bring thee gold, and for iron I will bring thee silver, and for wood brass, and for stones iron. And I will make thy officers peace, and thine exactors righteousness. Violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation, and thy gates praise. The sun shall no more thy light by day, neither for brightness shall the moon give light unto thee, but the Lord shall be unto thee an everlasting light, and the power thy glory. The sun shall no more go down, meaning our kingdom is not going to go down. In other words, once we get back in power, we're going to be in power forever. The sun is never going to go down on our kingdom again. The sun is never going to set on our kingdom. We're going to always shine, and we're going to always be in that glory once we get into the kingdom of heaven. There's no more going back into slavery, the other nations. Esau's not going to rise back up, put a hand. Schmidt nations are going to rise up and take us down ever again. When we get on top this time, we're going to remain on top. Neither shall thy moon withdraw itself, for the Lord shall be thine everlasting light, and the days of thy mourning shall be ended. So no more mourning, no more crying, no more vexation of spirit, no more weeping, no more hopelessness because of the condition that we're in as Israelites right now. Verse 21, thy people also shall be all righteous, they shall inherit the land forever. The branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. Verse 22, a little one shall become 1,000. This is in the kingdom. So what is this talking about? We're going to have sex. Again, like I said, The 2/3 that are going to pass in this destruction, the 2/3 are going to come back through the 1/3 that make it. The Lord said, 2/3 shall be cut off and die, and the third will I bring through the fire. It says, a little one shall become 1,000, or one is strong in his time.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Hakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and then sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Hakwadash. Pushing to get up out of there. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah. All right, and what we're going to get into this morning, all right, this morning news and prophecy, they're dealing with it's all about control. You know, when you look at what this devil, you know, these elites, okay, which are at the forefront, you know, of, all right, the control of this system, okay, you go through the bankers, all right, you go through, you know, these different wealthy families, all right, these elite families, okay, they have control of these different governments throughout the earth. You know, they got control of the economy, all right, most of the resources, okay, they're able to manipulate wars, all right, they're able to, you know, influence the masses, you know, through media, all right, through enchantments, okay, and it's always been about control. You know, and what these devils, you know, want to do with this technology, you know, is take their control over the masses to a whole nother level, you know, because most people are under control, you know, through enchantments, through debt, okay, through, you know, through constant war, through fear, you see, but they want to take this control to another level, you know, that makes them, you know, in their mind, likened to the Most High. Okay, because they got this, you know, delusion in their mind, all right, that they can be equal to the Most High with this technology, man. So this is the push that we're seeing, okay, with this New World Order. Now, this attempt of a New World Order. Now, let's go, let's get some precepts, okay? Let's go to the book of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3 says, don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs or the falling away, okay, which we had to fall away as a people. You know, we had to fall away from who we were. You know, we went into captivity. You know, the northern tribes, eventually they came over here and they got into, you know, madness, okay. They still had a, you know, a little trace of, you know, their heritage, you know, dealing with the Most High. All right, you can tell they was Israelites, but they had began to what? Fall away. The northern tribes that came over here from the Assyrian captivity, you know, they came to keep the law, but eventually they fell away from the law, you know. And then you had the southern tribes, you know, that went into the interiors of Africa, you know, and this where you get you know, the voodoo. You know, a lot of Jake got into that voodoo down there with them Hamites. You know, that's why you see a lot of them Levites or the Southern Kingdom, you know, heavy into the voodoo. You know, you go into the Haitians, all right, New Orleans. You see, they got influenced by that voodoo in Africa, man. Okay, so we fell away as a people, all right, but it had to happen because we would, you know, go into captivity, okay, under the lawless man, and the man of lawlessness is revealed. The man doomed to destruction. That's Esau. Esau is doomed to destruction, man. Everything that this devil is doing, all right, is bringing him to destruction. That's why the Lord has revealed this man in this time. Okay, so the man of sin, the man of lawlessness, Esau Edom, is revealed, and this is the NIV as well, right? The New International Version. Okay, so this man is being revealed in this time. The man that's doomed to destruction, man. Okay, so Esau is on the path to destruction in his mind. You know, he's on a path to another glory, which is a technocracy, man. Okay, which will give him God-like status in the earth. Okay, God-like control in the earth, man. But ultimately, he's on the way to destruction, man. You know, Esau is in self-destruct mode. All right, for even attempting to try to pull this off. Verse 4 said, he will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called the Most High or worship. You see, and with this technocracy, he's trying to exalt himself above the Most High. Okay, so that he sets himself up in the Most High's temple, proclaiming himself to be the Most High. So this devil is trying to sit in the seat of the Most High, as if he can handle the day-to-day operations of the Most High through his technology, man. Okay, and he can come nowhere near, but in his mind, he's going to try to pull it off because he thinks that he's close. You see, there's no one that's more deceived and more delusional than Esau. The Lord uses Esau to deceive and make people delusional. All right. And at the same time, there's no one that's more deceived and delusional than him. Okay. This man is trying to set himself up, okay, in the position of the Most High through technology, man. Okay. And this everything that we see being built out is for the sake of control, bringing in a control system, man, to where he can play the Most High on earth, man. All right, so he can control how many calories, all right, you intake. Okay, he can control what you eat, when you eat, if if you get to reproduce, what your woman is. Like the Most High has everything set up, been predestined. Okay, scripture say a man's going of the Lord. Well, Esau wants to change it to a man's going of Esau. Okay, scripture speak about how the Heavenly Father, has everything predetermined. Well, Esau, he wants to do that. Okay, he wants to be in control of predestined. You see, this is how far bugged out this man is. Okay, and what we're seeing and what the Lord is showing, man, that this nigga is a big fraud, man. Okay, he's nowhere near that capability, man. He make it seem like, with the movies, and he'll show you, one smart city. This devil got a long way to go, all right, to even pull off looking like he got it down pat like the Most High, man. Okay, this nigga's a fraud, man. You see? And the Lord gonna stop this man when he get to a certain point. And we know it's gonna be after he mandate the MOTB. It said, don't you remember that when I was with you, I used to tell you these things. And now you know what is holding him back so that he may be revealed at the proper time. Okay? So the Lord has been allowing this devil to reign. Okay? He gave him a rulership as, the Greco-Roman Empire, where he had world dominance. All right, and then he revived it back again. Okay, during the Renaissance, man. Okay, but now we're at that proper time where the Lord is revealing this man for what he is, who he is, and what he's trying to do, man. Okay, right before he's judged. Okay, the earth is going to know why Esau is going to be judged in the fashion that he's going to be judged, man. It's not going to be a secret. Okay, so the Lord is bringing everything out on this devil, man. You see, verse 7 said, for the secret power of lawlessness is already at work, but the one who now holds it back will continue to do so till he be taken out of the way. And this was the time of the pagan Roman Empire, all right, ruled by Edom. So he was already at work at this point. Okay, and he wanted to eradicate, all right, the followers of Yahushua, because the persecution of the followers of Yahushua started in Rome. you know, and he wanted to get, you know, the spirit of Yahushua out of the earth back then. You know, he was already at work, and the first persecution was under, all right, the one and only Nero. Okay, the first official, okay, persecution of the church, because it was Nero that pretty much made Christianity an enemy to Rome. You see? Let me see, find a little history. Did Nero make? See if it give us something, enemy. All right, so let's go here. And we know what time we in. You know, the Lord has everything, you know, coming around full circle in this perfect time. So let's real quick. Let's go from there. Okay, let's go from there. Let's go here. All right, ain't no coincidence that Nero, okay, is back in office, man. All right, AI overview says yes, yes, Emperor Nero famously made Christians an enemy of Rome by using them as scapegoats for the great fire of Rome in 64 BCE. You know, and it was a big, you know, it was a, you know, it was a way, you know, it was a crisis. It was a manufactured crisis. Okay, that he blamed on the followers of Yahushua, because in this time when you going to turn Christian, it wasn't, all right, a nigga, you see, in the pastel suit hide Easter eggs, all right, eating chocolate bunnies. Okay, the Christians that we see today, what they call Christians today, was far, all right, far from what was considered a Christian during this time. All right, and these were Israelites that followed Yahushua. Okay, and you had those believers, those followers of Yahushua during the time of the Roman Empire. It was Claudius. All right, Claudius was the one who expelled, okay, the Christians. All right, the followers of Yahushua. Okay, and then you had this nigga Nero, which is his adopted son. Okay, began to make Christianity, all right, the faith in Yahushua, he made it a enemy, all right, a state enemy to Rome. You see, and they're finna run the same play again. You know, so these events that they're gonna do, and you know, blame Iran, and then they're gonna link, you know, brothers, more than likely, you know, just looking at how they've been moving. You know, and tell how the devil might do it, but we know he's gonna come with something. Okay, and you already have our people prepped to help this nigga accuse us, man. Okay, you know that niggas, all right, and the nigga woman gonna be on the front line when the devil really pushes his propaganda, man, his smear campaign. It says he accused the marginalized sect of arson, all right, triggering the first state-sponsored, all right, the first state-sponsored brutal persecutions of Christians, which officially branded them as enemies of the state. Now, let's go here. All right, because it was his I think this was father-in-law, Claudius. All right, expel the Jews from Rome. All right, it says yes, the Roman Emperor Claudius expelled the Jews from Rome, an event widely dated by historians to approximately 49 and 50 AD. This historical event is documented by Roman historian, all right, Suetonius, and is referenced in the New Testament, all right, book of Acts. Okay, so this was you know, Claudius. I think Claudius was I think he adopted Nero, and Nero became his heir. Okay, let's see. Claudius adopt Nero. Let me see. All right, and you have these same, you know, these Edomite oligarch families, okay, or today. Okay. Yep. It said, yes, Emperor Claus adopted Nero. Okay, on February. Boom, boom. Yep. So, yep. Because the Roman nobility was tacky, man. Them niggas had baby mamas and stepchildren and all. Roman, when you go into these Caesars, man, it was tacky. These niggas was moles and PDF files and, dealing with such and such. This woman been passed around. Here it is. You're the elite, okay, of a world power. And you dealing with these passed around women, another nigga baby mama. And all. It's extremely tacky when you go into the nobility of Rome, But that's another lesson for another day, So let's go back here to Second Thessalonians. All right, but these same Edomites are back, man. All right, the nobility of the Greco-Roman Empire, you best believe they're back in these high places, and they getting ready to make their move. And this time they think because of technology, because ancient Rome didn't have this technology. Okay, the pagan Roman Empire didn't have this type of technology, man. So this devil, all right, with this technology, he thinks that, he's on to something, okay, with establishing, himself as a god. Those Caesars, they thought they was God, man. All right, matter of fact, just we'll look it up. I'll let the video play. We'll look it up. All right, I said, for the secret power of lawlessness is already at work back in 2 Thessalonians 2:7. But the one who now holds it back will continue to do so till he be taken out of the way. So the Lord has been holding back this man being revealed and the judgment. But now he's revealed because it's time for his judgment. Okay, and this is going to finalize this devil. He's going to be removed from power, put into captivity, and after years done away with. Okay, so this is the last time the Most High going to hit the gavel on this nigga, man. Okay, no more Renaissance for you goddamn cave beasts, man. Okay, it says, and the lawless one will be revealed. Now, it's not one person, all right? It's a nation, all right? There's one nation that is the wicked, which is Esau, Edom, okay? Whom the Lord will overthrow with the breath of his mouth, the spirit of the prophet. Yahushua has put his spirit on his prophets to spiritually overthrow this devil, man. Okay, that's why this nigga scrambling, weary, all right, tacky, okay? Because the spirit of prophecy has walked this nigga down, man. Okay, it says, and destroy by the splendor of his coming. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve, all right, that serve the lie. Okay, so this devil with this technology, he's able to exalt himself like he is a god. People really, because Esau has some things that he's able to do. But like I say, man, when you really get up on this nigga, man, this nigga, all right, is highly overrated. It's a lot of hype surrounding this nigga, man. Okay, of course he got weaponry that he ain't seen that he can destroy a lot of shit. He should. And they got quadrillions of dollars. Okay, all the resources. He should be able to come up with a weapon that can destroy a lot of shit. Okay, it's not super impressive that he can do that. Okay, he got all these engineers and he got all these scientists and he got all this and that. He got whole institutions, okay, of people that's building this technology, man. Okay, so he should have some weaponry, that can destroy a lot of things. Okay, but guess what? That same weaponry is going to do him no good when the Most High reach out and touch him through your house, man. Okay, so it's a lot of hype surrounding this nigga, man. But he's able to project himself through this technology, through movies and this and that. Esau do a lot of capping, man. He's capable of a lot, but then this nigga do a lot of capping too, man, which gives him, projects himself, and he exalts himself higher than what he is, man. So let's go here. Let's get this video here. This is the video I played a little bit of it yesterday. I had watched the rest of it. Like I say, pretty long, by an hour or something. And I'll put it back in the comment board again, and brothers want to tap into it. Watch a little bit of it today. But yeah, they all got some pretty good info. Okay. Concerning this control system. Catherine Austin Fitz, Ian Davis, and Simon Dixon. They pretty got, they go off on things. Because one thing about, they're not factoring in prophecy. They just dealing with the information and expertise that they have. So certain things, they kind of go off, the narrative. See, we stick to the narrative of prophecy. So let's play this.
Trump was installed with significant funding from Elon Musk and the technical industrial complex, significant funding from the Mellon banking family and the financial industrial complex. And then the third largest was Mariam Edelstein, the connection to Israel and the military industrial complex. So those were like his three funding. And the first thing he said as he infiltrated the Bitcoin conference and said, we're going to turn America into crypto capital. Then he started making significant wealth by launching meme coins, by launching Liberty Financial, by selling off presidential pardons to CZ, Justin Sun, started engaging in probably $6 billion of fraud, alleged, very questionable activities, tripled his net worth just through his crypto investments. Mm-hmm. And didn't do anything for Bitcoin. But what was the first thing we got? We got Genius Act. Genius Act effectively was stablecoin.
And what Trump had done, all right, this nigga hit the ground. All right, he got inaugurated January, all right, 20. You see, in January 21st, he handed you Americans over to the technocrats. Okay, all your tax money is going to the agenda of technocracy. Okay, and in the meantime, he's enriching himself by investing, all right, in these certain industries, okay, that play a part in this control grid. Him and his family have been enriching themselves, manipulating the market with the oil, manipulation, all this. So this, all Trump has done has come in and enriched himself, okay, and threw you Americans like an alley, okay? He threw you niggas off the backboard to the elites. You see, Trump threw you niggas off the backboard to the elites, man. Okay, and they're allowing this nigga to enrich himself. Okay, in the process, man. Okay, because it was a Rothschild banking family that got Trump out of debt. Okay, because Trump, present like he's this great businessman. Even that's a fraud. That nigga trash as a businessman. Okay, he went bankrupt several times. Then it took the Rothschilds to get him out that last bankruptcy, man. So he's fully bought and paid for, man. You see? So let's play this a little more.
Legislation that tilted the favor for a covert central bank digital currency to JP Morgan. Because in order to launch a stablecoin and pay yield, you had to get a banking license. Now, there were then lots of controversy around could stablecoins pay yield? And then you had Clarity Act in order to give clarity. Are you regulated by the OCC, the Currency Commission? Are you regulated by the SEC as a security? Or are you regulated by CFTC as a commodity? And right now we got a mock-up, which was from the banking lobby, which effectively made it where the only way to pay straight up yield is to have a banking license. But the crypto lobby, through the Trump administration, got it where you could connect stablecoin yield to a rewards program or a loyalty program. But at the same time, he started issuing banking licenses for the various crypto stablecoin issuers. So really, these are the covert favor.
Yeah, so Trump is giving all these cryptocurrencies, which all of it is going to lead to the CBDC. They let you people invest into this crypto. They even let you make a little money, just to reel you in. All these different cryptocurrencies, all right, are going all of them on the same path, all right, to this one CBDC, central bank digital currency. Okay, and Trump has been giving these bankers the license to bank. Okay, because it's switching over to a new style of banking, which is going to be CBDC. Okay, so you hear all these stable coins, freedom coins, meme coins, this coin, all of it is all central bank digital currency, man. And they're letting you people play around with it, make a little profit, getting you familiar with, okay, getting you familiar with this new style of banking, which is going to be crypto, which crypto just mean hidden. Okay, so it's money that you'll never see. It just be numbers on the screen, and they've been doing that a lot lately, conditioning people, all right, to not actually handle, okay, the money, okay, but just deal with numbers on the screen. Your banking app, you're most of the time you're just looking at numbers on the screen. You're never handling the physical money, all right, that you're supposed to have like that. Okay, most of the time we're managing numbers on the screen, and it's all a conditioning for this new CBDC, okay, banking system of the control system. And with the CBDC, which Catherine Austin Fitz is going to get into, okay, going to their programmable money gives them another layer of control that they don't have. You see, things are still loose. They want to tighten the screws on all this looseness in the system, man. To where people are able to still wiggle around with cash and, work off grid, still, get money and not, because you do money transactions, you go build, you go cut, your neighbor yard, for $100. Well, they can't track that. Okay. They want complete control. You see? So they play a little more.
Terms to get a banking license. And obviously the end goal of all of this is the precursor want, which is the tokenization and the programmability of that. And we started to see lots of freeze functions in DeFi contracts, freeze functions in stable coins. But the Bitcoin in self-custody via, has not been able to be frozen. And so we started to see new infiltration attempts into new implementations of Bitcoin. And you can start to see some of the core developers. There's been a lot of controversy where people have been chucked out, fired, as the Bitcoin core developers might be alternative agendas. And we've had competing implementations. So all of that to say is that stable coins combined with social credit scores, which is Elon Musk's part of the play in X. And the reason that things are starting to become more obvious right now is because they want us talking. They're deliberately trying to manufacture civil unrest. They're drawing us into our most radical version of ourselves through content and control of algorithms. And then they want the unrest to implement the police and surveillance state, which has been a long-term project through Patriot Act, through Genius Act, and now Clarity Act, in order to essentially replace the Constitution with this programmable 1984 Orwellian state. And Palantir is the other part. AI, social credits, stable coins, you got the complete control grid.
Yeah. And like you said, they're intentionally causing information to come out, and they're just open with it because they want civil unrest. These devils prepare for these devils to do a lot of, things to provoke the masses, okay, to civil unrest. And this energy crisis, the threat of another lockdown. You got energy crisis lockdown. You still got this, Hunter virus. Okay, it's still in the works of how they're gonna play that, because they want unrest. They want you people to make the link between, all right, the first lockdown and this one. They want you people to buck. See, in their mind, with the elites, it's like this: if y'all don't do nothing, they just gonna keep going and rolling out this control system. Okay, if y'all do something, they're just, all right, expedites their plan to where they can now say, okay, this is why we need new ID. This is why we need more surveillance. This is why we need this. We need checkpoints. We need this. We need to be able to defund, debank people. We need, So either way it go, they're gonna roll with their plan because the Lord's allowing them to get to a certain point. Okay, so these devils still have a few more things to achieve in trying to pull this off, man. That the Lord's gonna allow them to do. Okay, before He allows things to go out of control. All right, and this devil be judged, man. All right, so let's go here. And she's gonna tell you exactly what Trump was put in office to do, man. Okay, but you still got people to look at Trump. Okay, like he's really fighting for the people. He's just having a few bad days. He's just having an off year. Okay, well, let's play this.
National Settlements European Union project. America is where you extract all the privatized value via the stock market. But everywhere else, they get centralized states that plug in, and the
U.S. government spends $6 to $7 trillion a year, and it receives approximately $4 trillion in revenues and taxes and tariffs and fees. And that means it goes to the bond market for $2 to $3 trillion a year, and that's what controls. The White House and the president are not in control. And I would say that Trump was put in, as Simon described, the president does the marketing. Trump was put in to market the control grid using election fraud, immigration, child safety, some of these other things. And that's what he's been doing. So day one of the administration was data centers, because if you're going to do that social credit system, you're going to collect and manage and analyze in real time enormous amounts of data. The way you can see where this started to go immediately in the administration was what they did with Doge, and that describes Elon Musk's role in Palantir. What did Doge do? If I was going to stop financial fraud or lower the deficit in the government, there are certain places I would automatically go. I would automatically go to the government accounts at the New York Fed, particularly for DOD and HUD, where $20+ trillion is missing. There are certain places I would go to stop the fraud and to stop the drain on the deficit. That's not where Doge went. If you wanted to build AI with a high quality payment system for the purpose of building, whether it's social credit systems or control systems, you would go exactly where Doge went. And what was interesting is the moment that Doge got the first 3 or 4 immediate downloads of agency data, it did a deal with Palantir, and Palantir's stock just went to the moon.
Wow.
And that deal was Doge AI and Palantir AI. And from then on, now that gives.
And real quick, just to sum up what she was saying. So remember the whole Doge thing, at the beginning of Trump presidency, there was a big deal, about Elon Musk with this whole Doge, all right, on Department of Government Efficiency. Okay, and what Doge was doing, all right, Elon Musk was just going around, all right, and gathering all this federal data, okay, from the IRS, okay, from HUD, okay, from the health records, okay. He was just going and getting all this data from government, gathering all this data, okay, and then he handed it to Palantir and he got out of there. They made it seem like him and Trump fell out, okay, because he had already did what he came to do, and that was come to gather the data, okay, give it to Palantir, you see, which all this is nothing but, the one world government functioning right before your eyes under the disguise of private-public partnerships, okay, but ultimately it's a one world government, okay, that's setting itself up right before your eyes. And you get caught up with, Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. Okay. You get caught up with him and Donald Trump falling out. Okay. You get caught up with these narratives of the PayPal mafia. But ultimately, it's just the elites. Okay. They're beginning to consolidate all this data for a control system. Okay. All right. The elites, okay, are the ones that's causing these moves to be made for the sake of a control system, man. Okay, so that was that whole thing with Elon Musk, man. He just came and did a data snatch, all right, handed it off to Peter Thiel, and Peter Thiel sets up with this Palantir, which is the software, that that facilitates, when your facial recognition goes through. Okay, when they talk about facial recognition, well, this goes through Palantir software. All right, I believe it's called Gotham. You can look it up, called Gotham. Okay, and through Gotham, through your facial recognition, they're able to, all right, come up with a data footprint based off everything that you got that identifies you digitally. Okay, so let's play this a little more.
Them tremendous amounts of data. Managing that data takes equipment, it takes people, it takes machinery. And that's when the Department of Defense and other agencies started doing enormous high margin contracts with Palantir, presumably to help manage that data and integrate it with other things. Okay, now let me take the next step. The important thing to understand about public-private partnerships, and if you read Ian's book, he's written a lot about this. Public-private partnerships are designed to use public money to transfer technology, authority, and other things to private companies where they couldn't possibly do it on an economic basis in the market. And the problem with that system is it's evolved over the decades and decades, is it's highly uneconomic. So I have an online book called Dylan Reed and the Aristocracy of Stock Profits. And it talks about how you use taxpayers' money to fund private companies, drive their stocks up, they generate capital gains. That money goes back to Congress as capital gains. And so that's part of the machinery that we're seeing. And the problem ultimately for a society is if you're doing and growing these public-private partnerships, and we are exploding them as we speak, you need to subsidize them. The reserve currency can help subsidize, but one of the reasons we're seeing so much more violence happening globally and abrogation of sort of our global COP obligations is it's taking more and more plunder to keep a highly uneconomic series of public partnerships going.
Yeah, so basically she's saying the reason we're seeing more plunder, more violence, all right, because America, the system needs more resources, all right, to keep this thing going. You see? So that's why you see a resource grab, okay, because these devils, all right, are trying to lock down, okay, all resources in the earth, man, going into this new system, all right? And America has been the bully that has been taking the world's resources, man. The American military, which is a branch of the elites, okay? The American military is the henchman of the elites, man, of certain elites. Okay, mainly these Rothschilds. Okay, and that's why you see America is so obedient unto what the small hats. Okay, because the American military has been doing nothing but a power grab for the elites. Okay, mainly the Rothschilds for these last 80 years, man, since World War II. All right, American military has been nothing but like a mob, okay, hitmen for the elites, man. Okay, removing, leaders, setting up puppet governments, extrapolating resources. Okay, so what we're seeing, right, is these devils, they sent the American military out for one last power grab, man. Okay, and as they got to Iran, you see things moving a little different. Because why? Prophecy. Okay, and they're still able to make moves, all right, in the midst of what's going on, with Iran. They still able to, all right, make moves because the Lord wants them to get so far. So they still have, avenues to make moves, okay, and still roll out this control system, okay. But what we're seeing, all right, is these nations are actually beginning to have, this friction, about how they want to go into the new world order, because all of them agree, So let's go here. I think she mentions about all these nations agree with the technocracy. I think it's about right here. Let's see.
$55 trillion. So the question is, where is that money gone and what is it done? And my theory is, and you would hear this during the 90s, the bankers would say, democracy, the republic form of government no longer works. We, the bankers, need to control monetary policy centrally. And I think what they started to do is implement a financial coup where literally you move money out of the existing entities and you move it into other entities. We know the offshore havens, ballooned tremendously during this period as the money went missing. And then you use that money to build a new system. And what is that new system? That new system is a system where the bankers control fiscal policy as well as monetary policy. How do you implement that? You implement that with very expensive and very luxurious public-private partnerships that lead you into what Simon was describing with the social credit system. Now, there was tremendous pushback against CBDC, and the Fed chairman has said clearly, we need authorizing legislation in the United States to do CBDC. The weakness of the central bank from the banker's point of view in the US is it's a creature of Congress. And Congress has the power to pull the rug on it. And so I think what they've decided to do is go with the stablecoin digital token construct. At some point, they will reach the point where they can then implement a straight CBDC if they want to. They may not need to, but they've been very cagey about making sure no legislation would pass in the United States that would prevent a CBDC after 2030. So
Yeah, the way has been cleared. Congress has been completely, disarmed. What we're seeing Trump doing, he's completely dismantling, this old way, the Constitution through, the House of Representatives is through. See, the technocracy is a government where the people won't have any representation. Okay. In this government, it was corrupt, but in this system, you had some form of representation, for the people. That's why you had the House of Representatives, and it was always corrupt, but these things became more and more and more corrupt to the point to where you people don't have no representation. Okay. And Trump is just here to clean, and he's just here to finalize this old government, man. Okay. And usher in technocracy. You see, which you people don't have any representation. You see, it'd be a completely dictatorship. Okay, a technical, dictatorship, man. All right, a digital dictatorship. This is what the devils are rolling out. So they're making all the moves necessary to just roll this thing out. Okay, it's being rolled out. All right, that's why you see Trump can go to war. You don't need vote from Congress. Congress is irrelevant in this new system, man. Okay, let's go here, play a little more.
Assuming that the fight they've been making to stop legislation against CBDC is to protect ultimately that ability to do it. And the important thing to understand is, as we've described, this is a global process. What you're watching, the constructs of how the EU will do it is different than how the Chinese will do it. But what we seem to have is a global agreement on using an all digital system to implement a frightening level of central control of all citizens. And that's why it's very, very important that anybody listening to this understand what they can do to shift us from going into a state of what's really, to me, a slavery system.
There you go. And like she said, all these nations agree on a complete digital system. Okay, but there are different systems, in different regions. Okay, and what we're starting to see, these regions, are starting to battle for what system is going to run this digital system. But they all agree on complete digital control. Because I said, even Iran, they have mandated digital ID for their citizens. Okay, so all these nations, have made themselves compatible. Okay, especially these nations who we see involved in this conflict, they made themselves compatible for this complete digital system. Okay, but now it's like, okay, what system is going to run it? What privilege are we going to have? You see what You know, what perks are we going to have in this region? You know, and we're going to see these things, these scuffles, okay, turn into all out war. Okay, because right now we're seeing scuffles, and these scuffles are going to lead eventually to that war. Okay, that war to end all wars. So let me put this in the comment real quick. We'll get a couple of precepts. So let's get this in Ezekiel as well. This in the GNT. But let me get a couple of the comment board from the brother. All right, this the brother GMS, servant of Yahushua, Romans 9:22 said, "Well, the Most High, willing to show his wrath and to make his power known, all right, endured with much long suffering, all right, the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction." Okay, so the Lord has endured with long suffering Esau, Edom, you know, because Esau has to fulfill prophecy, you know, so the devil, you know, he's allowed to wreak havoc. You know, he's been able to prosper in wickedness, all right, for a set time, because there's an appointed time of his destruction, you know, and every move that he makes, he just getting closer to that appointed time. You see, so what he does in between time, okay, is going to be insignificant because he just set for judgment, man. Okay, matter of fact, let me play this as well real quick, just a few minutes, dealing with the Hunter virus, man. All right, good couple more from the brother as well. So this is another from the brother servant of Yahushua. It says, they encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune of land snares privately. They say, who shall see them? Okay. And these devils have been in the background setting this up for a long time. You know, they've been putting a lot of enchantments on the people. Like I said, they've been conditioning people, you know, going from from cash to, you know, to debit cards, to not a debit card with the chips now, you know, these pay apps, you know, Vimo, Cash App. Okay, so it's been conditioning all the way up to this point, and they've been in the background, you know, pushing people, okay, towards this new system. Okay, they've been sabotaging the government. Okay, they want these governments to seem incompetent. Okay, where people lose hope in all form of government, whether it's the left or the right. Okay, so they've been doing this for a while, man. They've been having this in the works for a while. You know, even going back to World War II. You know, when they began to introduce new identification. Okay, after World War II. You see, even going back to the Social Security card during the Great Depression. You see, that was all, you know, setting up systems of control. Okay, because without your Social Security card, you know, no Social Security number is hard to function. No ID is hard to function. Okay, so they've been creating systems of control for a while, man. You see, it says what the Lord is revealing him in these last days, man, because he's going to be judged. All right, verse 6, it says they search out iniquities, they accomplish a diligent search, both the inward thought of every one of them, and the heart is deep. Okay, and Esau, Edom, he's all in. You know, he's all in with this new world order, man. And they, you know, for the longest, you know, have let me see. You know, for a long time they've been, you know, fully invested, okay, into this new world order. You see? And every move that they're making has been pushing society, okay, to this control system, man. You know, and they're deep into it. They know, you know, they deep into the psychology of men. Okay. They're deep into their enchantments. You see, this control system. of even going back, even the credit score. Okay, all these different things, that the devil is highly invested into. It's all for this control system so he can play the most high in the earth, man, through technology. Now, just real quick, because just watching the devil. Well, let's play this real quick.
Outbreak was stranded at sea, with the passengers on board experiencing what was a cruise ship experiencing a massive viral outbreak was stranded at sea, with the passengers on board experiencing what was probably their worst vacation ever. The virus spreading on board, called the hantavirus, is deadly. It has a mortality rate ranging somewhere from 30 to 50%, making it one of the most lethal viruses in the world. Evidenced by the fact that, unfortunately, aboard that one ship, over the course of just a few weeks, 3 people died. Let's go through all the details that are currently available right now, including where the virus came from, how step by step, the geopolitical mess that the whole thing created with countries treating that ship like a hot potato, what's happening right now as the passengers are in the process of flying back to over 24 countries, as well as why we shouldn't worry because Moderna is on the case with a brand new vaccine that they've apparently had in development for a little while now.
Uh-oh. There you go. There you go. They was already working on this. Okay, this is already in the works. Moderna finna, you see, Moderna finna drop that new mixtape, man. Okay. So we're gonna see, man. That these devils are hitting it, going all in. They haven't just started making major moves with it yet. I'm quite sure they just monitoring the reaction to it. Seeing how people take, this thing and seeing if they're gonna go with it. But Lord, will they do? Because we know when the juice come out, okay, and these devils bring out the juice. You see, so you're gonna see shutdowns and more. So let's just rewind them here, play it again.
As the passengers are in the process of flying back to over 24 countries, as well as why we shouldn't worry because Moderna is on the case with a brand new vaccine that they've apparently had in development for a little while now, which is not only great news for us, but it's especially great news for all the shareholders because on that news, the stock price just popped off. Let's go through it all together right after you take a super quick moment to smash those like and subscribe buttons.
There you go. So hey, we'll see, man. Okay, we'll see. So let's go here. All right, let's go to the book of Ezekiel 28. All right, this is the book of Ezekiel 28 and 1. And this in the GNT said, the Lord spoke to me, mortal man, he said, or son of man, speaking to Ezekiel, tell the ruler of Tyre what I, the sovereign Lord, am saying to him. Now we know it was an actual, ruler, okay, of Tyre, okay, that the Lord was addressing, okay, but in the spirit, okay, we know this is speaking to Esau in this time as well. Okay, and see, that's how the Bible works, and that's why the Bible is for spiritual men. All right, because the Lord can be addressing an actual, ruler at the time, and also addressing Esau and his future rulership. You see, this is a living book. Okay, so these words aren't subjugated to just being about this one point in history. No, this Bible, it's a living book, and it can apply, okay, in today's time. Okay, that's why the Bible is full of history, but you can go through these accounts in history and then apply to today. You see, so it said, look, you tell, and basically telling Ezekiel, look, you tell this nigga what I said. Okay, it says, puffed up with pride, you claim to be a god. You say that like a god, you sit on a throne surrounded by seas. Okay, which America surrounded by seas. Okay, you pretend to be a god, but no, you are mortal not divine. And see, the Lord is going to show Esau that he's just a mortal. Okay. And there was a heavenly father that had this nigga propped up in rulership. All right. And giving this nigga particular power. Okay. And allow him, to tap into certain technology and witchcraft. Okay. The Lord was allowing this man access, man. Okay. To these things. It says, you think you are wiser than Daniel, that no secret can be kept from you. And this devil, he thinks that he's, on the brink of being all knowing and all powerful, man. Okay. Omnipresent everywhere at the same time, all seeing. Okay. All powerful. He thinks that he's on that quest, man. Okay. Well, he's delusional. I say he can do a lot, but he's limited, man. Okay. There's a lot of things that Esau can do. There's a lot of things he can't do. And there's more things that he can't do than he can do. Okay. It says your wisdom and skill made you rich with treasures of gold and silver. You made clever business deals, and mainly that petrodollar, man. You see, that petrodollar, man, that changed the game, and that made this devil really, it made this nigga damn near, you see, just to be able to create wealth out of nothing. Okay, but one thing about it, no matter how much money he print, there's finite resources. Okay, and when you keep having all this money print, chasing finite, when you have all this unlimited money print, chasing these finite resources, man, then eventually, man, it's gonna collapse. And he wants to collapse for a new system. Okay, but he's only gonna get so far in that new system, man. Okay, but this devil has been able to make all these, because the global economy is a major scam. And just to sum it up with the American economy, man, pretty much the taxpayers, because remember, with taxpayers and revenue, you have $4 trillion a year that come into America. Okay, and America spends about $7 trillion a year. That's why the deficit keeps going up. So they spend all the taxpayer money and revenue that comes into America, all right, and they spend it on wars, all right. Mostly goes into the military industrial complex, which there's taxpayer money that's paying for F-35s, but those F-35s don't benefit you. Okay, the aircraft carriers, no, the elites profit off that. So you go and just to sum it up, not to go too deep into it, but the American people pay the bills, okay, while these elite families profit. Okay, that's how the system is set up. Okay, your labor, you get just enough for your labor to survive. Okay, then they tax your labor, you see, and pay the bills. You see, and when you pay the bills and you pay for these ventures, you pay for, these wars. All right, the people pay for the different coups. The people pay for, all right, to do this reconstruction in these war-torn areas, and these elite families, okay, and certain of their cronies, they underlings, make the profit off of it, man. So it says you made clever business deals and kept on making profits. How proud you are of your wealth. Now then, that is what I, the sovereign Lord, am saying, because you think you are as wise as God. All right. And the devil, he really thinks that he's on the same playing field with the Most High. That through Palantir and through AI, that he's able, to be on the same playing field as the Most High, knowing everything, being able to predict everything, knowing all the probabilities and outcomes. He thinks that he's on that level, man. Remember, this man is highly delusional, man. Okay, the Most High has this man very delusional. That's why it's going to be embarrassing how it play out for Esau, man. It said, I will bring ruthless enemies to attack you. They will destroy all the beautiful things you have acquired by skill and wisdom. And see, it's the Lord that's going to cause these nations to bring down, all right, this mighty American empire. Okay, because if they all agree on this complete digital system, man, okay, we're going to see infighting and these skirmishes increase. Okay, and it's going to lead to America being completely destroyed, which has been, that's why the scripture call America the excellency of the Chaldeans. And it's not the American people, it's the American system that's been the excellency of the Chaldeans. Okay, this economic and military system that they've been able to dominate the earth with, man. Okay, not the people, not the American pastimes, the baseball games. No, the American system that they was able to dominate the earth with, man, to acquire wealth and power. You see, the Lord's going to destroy it. All right, so they will kill you and send you to a watery grave, and that's a dishonorable death when you die. If you die on the seas, okay, because you pretty much you have to be tossed overboard, man. Okay, because they couldn't preserve their body, so you have to be tossed overboard. It's a dishonorable death, man. So here it is, through traffic, through, the shipping, the SWIFT system that dominated the global trade market, the ships, all this shipping that we see throughout the globe. Well, they had to go through what these American banks, which are the banks of the elites, these elite banks, okay, controlled by what? The American military. You see, the Navy was nothing but a trade patrol for the elites, man. Okay, not to protect American borders. It was a trade patrol for the elites. Okay, the army, was to do what? Asset grabs. Okay, and to be a presence in these foreign lands that they were stealing from, man. The Air Force would come and, pummel your infrastructure. And then these Americans will come through and get these contractors to rebuild. All right, these elite, families will get these contracts to go rebuild. Okay. So now, man, the Lord is going to pummel, okay, the American system, man. And it's going to be embarrassing how these devils, okay, their empire dies, man. It's going to die in the water. Dishonorable death. It says, when they come to kill you, will you still claim that you are a power? When you face, all right, your murderers, it says you will be mortal and not at all divine, man. And the Lord's finna show, all right, and he is showing as we're watching how mortal this nigga is, man. All right. So I'll leave it there. You see? Because and the main thing that's showing that he's mortal is these limitations. He's limited. All right, this nigga has limitations, man. Okay, and the Lord's going to continue to exploit and expose this devil for just being a mortal man, and he's nowhere near God, man. So Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified once again. I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Kakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessings, salutations to the whole elect. Shalom.